Happy to be here, Tim. Thanks for the intro. All right, so this is about your career and how potentially some things I've learned can make it better. If you're wondering where my accent is from, I'm originally from Eastern Europe, Romania. It's much known for the vampire stories, although initially they hated it. Now they embraced it and are trying to milk it for tourism. So you can go and visit the castle. I have a background in computer science, and I also learned that Silke does as well. Later did an MBA, but I didn't find it very useful. It felt useful at that time. And I've been building product people since 2019. We had our first employee in 2020, and we're about 50 people right now. And you see these logos here because everyone likes to show them off. What I want to show you in perspective is that this all came very recently, right? So if you're also thinking, okay, where I'm feeling a bit stuck and so on, don't feel like it. I got rejected by Zalando when I think I came to Berlin in 2015, and I also got rejected by other brands who then later became just one of our clients, and it wasn't even like an ICP, so ideal customer profile. So keep at what you're doing. You see, I did initially QA automation, then became a team lead, then discovered product management because it wasn't much of a thing back in what was it, 2012. So yeah, that is for you to keep it in perspective. So where am I coming from with this talk? We've served about 100 clients so far, and that means about 350 cross-functional teams. And we have a pretty good gender ratio in the company. Also, lots of people with immigrational background and from a lot of walks of life. We're distributed first with the team centered around Germany, Spain, Netherlands, and a few other countries in Europe, because we try to operate in Central European times for our clients and be able to also meet them on a relatively short notice. So then to the career, if you're not following, is anyone following Scott Galloway? No, I found about him when he made fun of WeWork. He had this article that became viral called "We What the Fuck," and then after that, I just like followed him on LinkedIn and subscribed to his blog and so on. And he's now publishing a book about personal wealth management and how to basically set yourself up. And this is also from him that careers are over invested as asset classes. Lots of people gravitate towards sexy jobs, and that's why you end up people going into arts or other areas that don't pay well, because boring jobs, even if they offer a steady career, not everyone is super excited to do this. And he has a quote I really love, where the people telling you to follow your dreams are the ones who made a lot of money either in a software as a service tool or running a garbage collection company or something completely boring and unsexy. So for how does this tie in with product management advice? I think we're also at this point where PM has become a bit of a sexy job. We saw this, we have run an associate program at Product People, and sometimes people come in saying they want to do product management, and then they realize they don't want to put up with the stress and the constant frustration of it. And it's also something that's changing quite a lot. And it's also not a C-level position, which brings also a lot of the frustrations that you see on LinkedIn and overall with people doing product management. So product managers, product owners, sometimes product ops complaining about that. So the good advice, there's still also some good advice, is that you can still get pretty easy in. So the 5 people who voted they're not in product, the good news is that you can get into product quite fast. There are lots of associate product management roles, and you could also transition horizontally in your company. If you, for example, have a background as a recruiter, you could go into an ATS, so applicant tracking system, or any Personio or other HR tool, because your background would be valued. It isn't as easy if you want to become a doctor from one day to the other, right? So you're going to have to suffer through 7 years of medical school if you get in at all. So it's still easier. You have a lot of leverage, right? You could be one day arguing with your developers about like something. They'll say, this user story is not good. And then the next level, you'll be presenting to a board member or to the CEO of the COO or some other C-level, right? So you can just have low status, high status type of relationships within the company. And if you ever want to become an entrepreneur, it's not just this that is sufficient, but it does put you a bit through the stress that you're going to go through when you found a company. So if you're curious about founding a company, and I know a few product managers who have been, it's good to try it out, because if you can't handle the stress of the PM role, then just being entrepreneur is going to be 5x more annoying and more stressful, and you have to do a lot of sales and other more boring stuff. So it's good to see if you want to become a founder. All right, and then looking from where you're starting, what can you do to improve your career? So who here wants to get into product? Hands up. No one. All right, then I'll go fast over that slide. Who is already in product and wants to lead people eventually? All right, so this is I can spend a bit more time here. And who is already leading people but is wondering, can I become a founder? How do I would move into more C-level or CX suite? It's like, no, not that.
More stress.
I had someone in my company that he actually said he wouldn't want to do that, because at one of our clients he did an parental leave cover for head of product and was like, I don't want to do what the VP here is doing, and I also don't think I want to do like what the heads of product here are doing, because they will break me emotionally. But anyway, we finished the parental cover successfully and so on, and I think the client was trying to recruit our director, and then the person was like, no, I cannot deal with this company emotionally long term. It was good for so it's also good to see what you want to do. So getting into product management, I'll go through it. Is what I was saying, that this is what we tested at ProductPeople, and background doesn't seem to matter, right? This is like everyone from everywhere, and of course you can get into these APM roles or transition laterally. Then from PM to product leader, I've noticed two patterns: either companies who like to grow their own talent internally, or companies who are disappointed to some degree with the talent that they have, and they are looking for someone to either come in and shake the boat from the outside, or coach and upskill their people. We've been more of the grow talent from within, but also our business model is to do interim product management, which is a bit different than in-house product management. So people need to be able to know this agency model to be able to coach people. But from the outside perspective, for example, Booking.com does more of a 50-50. They also promote people to group PM from within, but they also hire from the outside. So if you're ever pitch that, hey, come in and lead these people and so on, be very careful that you get the support you need, because we've had some client engagements that weren't as impactful as we would have wanted to, and this was because the client had gotten a VP from a shiny brand and then brought this person in, and they thought that by bringing that person in, magic will happen. And then this person wasn't given enough headcount. That's why they ended up having us as interims. But then we weren't given a development team or even access to that and so on, because it was like one of these funny setup where they had a VP of product management in sales. And then we later found out there was a chief information officer, and then product owners were the ones deciding what the development team builds, and those are under the chief information officer. So we thought, oh, okay, we're reporting into the VP of product. Things couldn't be better. And then we couldn't do much more than advising on acquisitions, doing market research, doing user interviews, and everything you can do without a development team, because then we would just like send things over to the product owner who would say, this is nice, but we just fired the dev team because the budget ended, and we work like in budgets. And there was like all these things. So be very careful when you join a new company that you also don't get just the title, but the means of making the set impact that they want. Because sometimes companies want to be transformed, but like don't want to change anything or so on. So look at if the company you're joining has a track record of promoting from within. Also, if you're a woman or minority, Silke had this great insight before we started the talks, that she was the only one in a 40 people meeting that was a woman, right? So then and her team ended up having like about 50-50 split. And a lot of the people said that they came because she was there, or they felt to some degree represented. So it doesn't mean that if you're the only one, things are bad, but it could mean it may impact your chances, right? So if you look at it statistically, if statistically like no one makes it, then it doesn't mean that they're against you or there's something, but just it means statistically you have a lesser chance of yourself making it. So maybe you optimize your bets towards companies who seem to be more successful at getting the numbers that you're interested in. I'm also skipping the principal PM path that has also become popular in recent times, where we see organization flatten. That's why there are also a few fewer heads of and director roles on the market, even fewer than PM roles, because some organizations are cutting one management layer. And many times they're also bringing this principal PM, which is kind of a senior plus, and you don't want to have your senior people feel like they get stuck. So then you put them on this principal track that pays pretty well, but doesn't have headcount. So that's also for you to consider. There are some companies doing this like Miro and so on. But I won't cover it for the sake of simplicity. And then this part, let's say you're leading some people, but maybe you want more stress, you know, and then like, how could you get more stress and more responsibility? So I heard you're running a company back there, right? With Digital Leute. So you can tell people how bad it is. So here you have a few options, and I would encourage you to look through it, because at some point, a founder who sold to company and is now at his first company, gave me this advice when I was complaining. You know, if I fix this in my company, then the next thing, then everything will be better. And it was like, no, it never gets better. You just get used to it. And I think that was I resented that advice for a while, but that's true. There'll always be a problem. It's a good indication if you have newer problems. But sometimes you also may have the same problem repeating, because you'll have people underperforming, you have people who were a fit now, but something's changed, or they just stop being a fit, and then you need to sort it out. So there are like some problems that keep recurring, and you just get better at dealing with it emotionally and also tactically from what you're going to do. And I think this is also the same path. It's indeed it's a bit more disconnected. So I saw for myself when I ended up initially it was just me in the company. Then we had 5 people. Then we rapidly grew to 20, then 30, then now we're close to 50. That at some point I stopped having a connection with the day-to-day work, because I had a few more junior reports that were reporting into me, but their work was either operations or demand generations, like sales, marketing, and so on. And then the product team was reporting into 1 or 2 levels of management, so I felt relatively disconnected from their day to day sometimes, and I was at some point told I lack empathy because I had forgotten how it is to be client facing. So at some point I went back to being client facing myself, to just gain a bit more of that empathy, and it actually helped, because I changed some of our playbooks and how we used to do things, because it just didn't make sense when I was starting to follow what we had created. So see for yourself, there's a level of abstraction. You need to deal with what people call politics, but it's also kind of sensing some shifts, negotiating a lot of things that are in flux, and also lots of meetings, and lots to sometimes you feel like one of these drug addicts, that you have like the highs and the lows, because you either get all the praise and all the good things, right? Your numbers start looking well, your people are doing well, it's like everything, so you have a lot of things to sunlight in your presentations, or you get all the crap, like someone just resigned and it was like on a critical assignment, or some department promised to do this and they are not doing it, and they're actually ghosting or doing something, and then you need to go in and solve that. So it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. On the founder side, if you want to take the financial risk, so it's all that, but with also additional financial risk and financial gains if things pan out. So it's more for you. What we did notice in the last years, there have been a few accelerators that became popular, at least in my sphere of the world. One is Antler and one is Entrepreneur First, where they would take about 10% of your company. We lost 2 senior PMs last year to these accelerators. And one of them is still at it. The other one found another early stage company to join as their early stage CPO and seemed very excited, and also became more compassionate about what you were doing in a company. Because when I met with this ex-employee, I was like, oh yeah, now I understand what you've been going through. And it's like, okay, good, because you were complaining so much before. Like the person understanding the value of selling or retaining customers and so on, because at early stage, especially, you need to do everything yourself. So see what's for yourself. I know another CPO who joined or moved companies because she felt she couldn't get promoted to CEO. And the new company she joined, they have a bit of this tacit agreement that if things go well, she's going to make CEO in 3 or 5 years. So it's possible. And I did see more people from a product management background stepping into this role. CTPO is also becoming a bit more popular. And I think if companies are to merge these roles, which some people are against, but I know money is tight, it's better sometimes to have someone with a product background, or maybe someone like Silke that has also a tech background. So look out for that as well. And for chief operating officer, this happens because everything you're going to do in a company requires tooling and processes, and who's best at doing that than someone with a product sense? Because a lot of the tooling and processes, many times yourself probably dealt with in some organization, if you think about it, they were just like so bad. It's like when we see it when dealing with HR or purchasing, is just so poorly set up or so inefficient. It was like, wow, they could have just used the type form or something to intake all our company data. Now we need to do like back and forth document sending with like some person from Southeast Asia where they outsource some business process they wouldn't have needed if they would have just used something to accelerate this work. So that's where I would say you could also shine. And probably the difference between COO and CPO is that COO is a bit less creative, right? You're not deciding new features or anything, but you can still mold the organization and affect a lot of the things, the way they do things there. And there are lots of companies where I would say sometimes the COO role is more powerful than the CPO role. If you think all the companies that have physical assets, or a lot of local presence, or where operations is the one that really dictates the margin and how much money they're making and how much they can squeeze out of that. All right. And I think the takeaway, if you want one from this talk, is decide what you're not. So it's probably for myself, I realized at some point when doing interim roles in corporate, I realized I wouldn't want to be corporate middle management, because it feels like I wouldn't have a lot of power there, because even if you want to hire or let someone go, you need to deal with HR, you need to deal with upper management, you need to make sure that if you let someone go, the budget doesn't go to the whole department and it stays with you and you can still hire a replacement. And like, oh, it's just like, this is familiar. Yeah, so there's like all these things, and then you have a lot of processes that are just imported into you from the org, but you can't really decide aside from like a micro level or how you do things. But at the same time also struggled embracing the founder angle, because I'm coming from a country that's relatively poor. I struggled to be more risky, or take more risks financially. And probably this is why I have an agency and not a venture funded company. Because for the agency, I could see a path to profitability very fast. Whereas with the VC funded company, you need to be at it for a few years and you need a VC network and so on to raise capital. So at least this is my personal story. Think for yourself what you'd like to do. And another part that at some point became important for me was to also choose the people that I could work with. Because for the client work, it's fine if it's 3 or 6 months. At some point, you also learn things about yourself from the things that irritate you. But if it's like longer term working in a certain way, for example, with some companies where they like back channeling a lot, and that's like part of their culture, wasn't very compatible with me. So I can do that for a while and I can learn, okay, if I need to make this move, I need to do like all these backstage things first, and then I set a meeting and then I do this and that. but it's not how I naturally go about it, because in my company, I write a Slack message. At most, I write it in a more private group, and then I see if there's an opposition from leadership or like something, and then we do it. Whereas in other places, it felt like there was so many extra steps and harder to control. So after you decide what you want to do, collect the relevant experience, and that's, you can do also some volunteering. There are all these places where, for example, you can do, you can coach people or build this up somehow and then tweak your resume to it. And then I hope you are successful. So if you're looking for a role at some point, consider us. We're mostly hiring at tactical levels, so from junior/associate to mid-level to senior. And this is me in case you want to connect on LinkedIn and give feedback, or I don't know, anything you want. Invite me to speak at Digital later. All right.